Elijah Carter stood on the stage of the Harmony Orchestra, his heart racing with an exhilarating mix of nerves and excitement. The grand hall was filled to the brim with an audience that buzzed with anticipation, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of the stage lights. It was the culmination of years of hard work, countless hours spent perfecting his craft, and an abiding dream that had sprouted in his childhood. As he lifted his violin to his chin, he felt the familiar warmth of the instrument against his skin, a sensation that had always brought him comfort and purpose. With a deep breath, Elijah closed his eyes and let the music flow through him. The notes danced effortlessly from his bow, filling the air with rich melodies that resonated in the hearts of everyone present. The orchestra harmonized beautifully around him, their instruments melding together in a tapestry of sound. He could see the audience swaying gently, lost in the performance, and he couldn't help but smile. This was where he belonged. However, beneath the surface of this magical moment, Elijah could sense an undercurrent of tension. There were whispers among some orchestra members, furtive glances exchanged that left a bitter taste in his mouth. He had heard the rumors, murmurs of discontent regarding his presence in the orchestra. Elijah shook off the thought, focusing instead on the music. He was determined not to let anything ruin this moment. As the final notes of the piece rang out, the audience erupted into applause, their cheers echoing against the walls. Elijah opened his eyes, taking in a sea of smiles directed at him, and felt a surge of pride. He bowed deeply, losing himself in the warmth of their appreciation for just a moment longer. But as he stepped off the stage, the weight of the whispers returned, heavy and oppressive. The following rehearsal was a stark contrast to the previous night's performance. The air was thick with tension, and Elijah could feel the eyes of his fellow musicians on him, scrutinizing and judging. As they prepared to run through a challenging piece, he overheard two musicians in the corner, their voices low but laced with venom. "Can you believe he's even here?" one of them sneered, barely masking his disdain. "He doesn't fit the orchestral image. It's embarrassing, right? It's like they think his talent makes up for everything else," the other replied, their tone dripping with sarcasm. What a joke. Elijah's heart sank at the words, the sting of their prejudice cutting deeper than any critique of his playing ever could. He wanted to confront them, to demand respect, but instead he swallowed his hurt and focused on the music. He had always believed that his talent would speak for itself. Yet, it was becoming increasingly clear that the notes he played weren't enough to drown out the ugly truths that lingered in the shadows. Later that day, Mr. Thompson, the orchestra's conductor, summoned Elijah to his office. The room was adorned with accolades and framed photographs of past performances, a testament to the legacy Thompson had built. But as Elijah walked in, the atmosphere felt charged with tension. "Sit down, Elijah," Thompson said, his voice lacking the warmth it usually carried. Elijah felt his stomach twist. He could sense that this conversation wouldn't be pleasant. "Thank you, sir," Elijah replied, forcing himself to maintain eye contact, though he could feel the weight of the conductor's gaze piercing through him. "Look, Elijah," Thompson began, his tone serious. "You've been a valuable member of this orchestra, but I have to be honest with you. Some of the board members believe you don't fit the orchestral image we strive for." Elijah's heart raced as he struggled to process Thompson's words. "What do you mean?" "My music, your talent isn't in question," Thompson interrupted, holding up a hand. "But there are concerns about your presence affecting the orchestra's reputation. We need to maintain a certain image, and it's vital for our unity and success." The words hung in the air, heavy with implications. Elijah felt the ground beneath him shift. The weight of rejection settled heavily on his chest. "So, what are you saying?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "I'm saying that, effective immediately, we can't have you as part of the Harmony Orchestra anymore," Thompson stated, his tone unyielding. Elijah's breath hitched as the reality of the situation crashed over him. Heartbroken and betrayed, he stood up, his hands trembling at his sides. "You're expelling me for nothing but prejudice?" "It's not personal, Elijah. It's business," Thompson replied, his expression hardening. With a sense of finality that felt insurmountable, Elijah stepped out of the office, leaving behind not just the orchestra, but the dreams he had nurtured for so long. As he walked down the corridor, the echoes of the rehearsals faded into silence, replaced by the deafening roar of his own despair. Elijah Carter sat on the worn wooden steps of his childhood home in New Orleans, the creaking sound of the porch beneath him echoing like a distant memory. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a golden hue over the neighborhood he had once roamed as a child, full of dreams and aspirations. Yet now, as he gazed out at the street where he grew up, a heaviness weighed in his chest, a bitter reminder of the injustices he had faced. Why did it have to end like this? He murmured to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. The vibrant sounds of jazz drifted through the air, yet they felt like a cruel taunt. The music that had once uplifted him now felt like an echo of his lost dreams. He recalled the day Mr. Thompson had called him into his office. The memory played vividly in his mind, the coldness in the conductor's eyes, the sharpness of his words. Elijah shook his head, trying to dispel the emotions that threatened to overwhelm him. As the sun continued its descent, a familiar figure approached. It was his mother, Grace, her arms laden with a basket of fresh produce from the local market. Her smile, warm and inviting, cut through the fog of his despair. "Elijah, darling, I brought you some of your favorites," she said, placing the basket beside him. "You need to eat. You can't let this get to you." He looked up at her, his heart aching. "Mom, it's hard. I thought I was finally where I belonged, and then it all just crumbled." Grace sat beside him, her presence a soothing balm. "You know, sometimes the world tries to pull us down, but it's how we respond that defines us. Remember what your grandpa used to say? It's not about how many times you fall. It's about how many times you get back up." Elijah sighed, the weight of her words filling the air between them. "I want to get back up, but where do I even start? The orchestra was my life." "Create," she urged, her eyes sparkling with inspiration. "You have a gift, Elijah. Use it. Write about your experiences. Let your music speak for you." Her encouragement ignited a flicker of determination within him. "You really think I can?" he asked, uncertainty still lacing his voice. "I know you can," she replied, her tone resolute. "You have a story that the world needs to hear. Don't let anyone silence your voice." As dusk settled over New Orleans, Elijah felt something shift inside him. Maybe his mother was right. Perhaps it was time to channel his pain into something beautiful. The thought of composing music that spoke to his struggles and triumphs ignited a spark in him. He could create an album, a testament to his journey, an expression of resilience. The following weeks were a whirlwind of creativity and catharsis. Elijah transformed his childhood bedroom into a makeshift studio, littered with sheets of music paper and recordings of melodies that flowed from his soul. He poured his heart into every note, crafting lyrics that depicted his pain, his anger, but also his hope. "Sometimes I feel the weight of the world, but I'll rise above the hurt. With every note, I'll sing my truth in this rhythm of resilience. I'll find my youth." He sang softly to himself, feeling the power of his words resonate in the empty room. Each chord struck a chord within him, and as he played, visions of brighter days danced in his mind. Months passed, and the melodies he crafted began to take shape. Elijah poured his soul into the album he titled Rhythms of Resilience. It was a collection of stories of struggle, of heartache, and ultimately of triumph. He envisioned it reaching people who, like him, felt marginalized and unheard. One evening, after a long day of recording, Elijah sat back and listened to the final mix. He felt a wave of emotion wash over him. This was more than just music. It was a declaration of his existence, a testament to his journey. "This is my voice," he whispered, a smile creeping onto his face. And with that, he knew he was ready to share his story with the world. The path ahead might be uncertain, but for the first time since his expulsion from the Harmony Orchestra, he felt a sense of purpose. He would not only rise again, he would soar. As Elijah Carter's debut album, Rhythms of Resilience, climbed the charts, the world around him transformed. It was a roller coaster of emotions, each spike and dip reflecting the highs and lows of his tumultuous journey. His nomination for a Grammy, a prestigious accolade that had once seemed unattainable, filled him with an overwhelming mixture of pride and disbelief. It was a testament not only to his talent, but also to his resilience in the face of adversity. In the cozy confines of his small studio apartment in New Orleans, Elijah sat at his piano, the sound of keys echoing through the room. The walls adorned with photographs of jazz legends and family moments felt alive with his energy. With a cup of coffee in hand, he reflected on how far he had come. The weight of the oppressive shadows from the Harmony Orchestra still lingered, but they were now mere whispers compared to the roar of his newfound success. "Can you believe it, Eli? A Grammy," his childhood friend Marcus exclaimed over the phone, his voice bubbling with excitement. "You've shown them. You've made it." Elijah chuckled softly, the warmth of Marcus's enthusiasm washing over him. "It's surreal, man. I still can't wrap my head around it. Just a few months ago, I was questioning everything. Yeah, but you channeled that pain into something beautiful. You didn't let them break you," Marcus replied. "You're a warrior, bro. When are you going to celebrate?" "Soon, I promise. Right now, I'm just trying to soak it all in." Elijah glanced at the framed Grammy nomination letter on his wall, the reality of it still hitting him like a wave. I guess this is what resilience looks like. Meanwhile, the Harmony Orchestra was grappling with the consequences of their decision. The absence of Elijah's talent reverberated through the rehearsal hall, where whispers of discontent mingled with the sound of instruments. The musicians felt it too. His absence was palpable, and the orchestra's reputation was on shaky ground. During a break, the first violinist, Sarah, spoke up, her voice tinged with frustration. "We should never have let him go. He was the heart of this orchestra," she said, her eyes scanning the room for agreement. "I know," replied David, the cellist. "But what can we do now? The board is backing Mr. Thompson. They think he knows best." "Best for whom?" Sarah shot back. "We're losing our edge without Elijah. The audience can feel it. They loved him." The murmurs of dissent grew louder as more musicians joined the conversation, recognizing the talent they had lost due to prejudice. They began to question their loyalty to the conductor, who appeared increasingly out of touch with the very essence of music, unity, and expression. The night of the Grammy ceremony arrived, and Elijah stood backstage, nerves coiling in his stomach. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement, but he felt a weight on his shoulders. This moment was not just about him. It was about everyone who had ever felt marginalized or silenced. As his name was announced, Elijah took a deep breath and stepped into the spotlight. The applause was deafening, a wave of affirmation crashing over him. He approached the microphone, his heart racing. "Thank you," he began, his voice trembling with emotion. "This moment is a culmination of not just my work, but the voices of so many who have been overlooked and underestimated." He paused, glancing at the audience, where familiar faces beamed with pride. "I stand here, not just as a musician, but as a testament to resilience. Music is a universal language, one that should be accessible to all, regardless of race or background. We must lift each other up and celebrate our differences." As he spoke, a palpable energy surged through the room. Elijah felt empowered, the gravity of his words resonating deeply with those present. To anyone out there feeling like they don't belong, know that your voice matters. Keep fighting for your place in this world. A standing ovation erupted, thunderous applause echoing in his ears as tears streamed down his face, mingling with the joy of validation. In that moment, Elijah Carter was not just an artist. He was a beacon of hope, a symbol of unyielding spirit against a backdrop of adversity. Elijah stood on the small stage of a community center in New Orleans, a fresh sense of purpose driving him forward. The room was filled with young musicians, eager and hopeful, their eyes wide with admiration. As he adjusted the microphone, he could feel the weight of their expectations pressing down on him, but it was a weight he welcomed. This was not just about music anymore. It was about using his voice to advocate for change. "Thank you all for being here today," he began, his voice steady and resonant. "I want to talk about something that goes beyond notes and rhythms. It's about resilience and equality in music and in life. He glanced around the room, taking in the faces that mirrored his own youthful dreams. I know many of you have faced challenges, just like I have, but it's crucial that we never let anyone define our worth. The audience listened intently, their silence punctuated only by the occasional rustle of sheet music. Elijah shared stories of his journey, the highs of performing with the Harmony Orchestra and the lows of facing prejudice. When I was expelled, I thought my dreams were over, but I channeled that pain into my music. I want you to know that your experiences, your struggles, can fuel your art. Use your voice, your talent, and never let fear silence you. As he spoke, the young musicians began to nod, their expressions shifting from concern to determination. Elijah could see their spirits lifting, a collective realization dawning upon them. He encouraged them to write their own stories, to compose music that reflected their truths. "Your voice matters," he reiterated, the conviction in his tone echoing through the room. "Together, we can advocate for the changes we want to see in the arts." Meanwhile, back at the Harmony Orchestra, Mr. Thompson sat in a dimly lit conference room, the atmosphere thick with tension. He stared at the anxious faces of the board members gathered around the table. The fallout from Elijah's expulsion had been severe. Ticket sales had plummeted and social media was ablaze with criticism. The orchestra was under siege, and the pressure was mounting. "We can't ignore the public outcry any longer," one board member, Helen, asserted, her voice cutting through the silence. "Elijah's album is a sensation. He's become a symbol for so many who feel marginalized in the arts. We must address this before it's too late." Mr. Thompson clenched his jaw, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. "I understand the concerns, but we made a decision based on our vision for the orchestra." "Elijah simply didn't fit that vision," he replied, attempting to maintain his composure. "Vision?" Helen scoffed. "Is that what you call it? We've lost a brilliant musician and alienated a large portion of our audience. If we don't act now, we risk losing everything." The gravity of her words hung in the air, and Mr. Thompson shifted uncomfortably in his seat. In the days that followed, the orchestra's desperation grew. They reached out to Elijah, drafting a letter of apology in hopes of mending their fractured relationship. "We were wrong," it began, "and we want to make things right." But Elijah, now more empowered than ever, read the letter with a mixture of disbelief and resolve. He gathered his close friends, musicians who had stood by him through the tumultuous journey. "They want me back," he said, his voice low but firm. "But it's not about putting me back on stage. It's about accountability and change." He tossed the letter onto the coffee table, frustration etched on his face. "How can I return when the same people who expelled me haven't truly acknowledged their wrongs?" His friend Maya leaned forward, her brow furrowed in thought. "Elijah, you've built something incredible on your own. They're trying to benefit from your success now, but you have to stay true to yourself. They need to understand the impact of their actions, not just apologize to save face." Elijah nodded, her words resonating deeply within him. "You're right. I can't compromise my principles. This is a moment to stand firm, not just for myself, but for everyone who has been marginalized in this industry." His heart raced with determination as he prepared to respond to the orchestra. "I'll decline their offer. I need them to understand that my worth isn't contingent upon their acceptance." As he penned his reply, Elijah felt a wave of clarity wash over him. He was no longer just a musician. He was a voice for change, a beacon of resilience. The world was listening now, and he was ready to continue his journey, one that would inspire others to rise and claim their rightful place in the spotlight. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow over the bustling streets of Atlanta, Elijah Carter prepared to step onto the stage for the first show of his national tour. The air was thick with anticipation, and the sound of excited chatter filled the venue. He stood backstage, taking a moment to breathe deeply, allowing the weight of the past year to wash over him. Here he was in a city that once felt like a distant dream, ready to share his music with the world. Elijah adjusted his guitar strap, feeling the familiar weight against his shoulder. He could hear the audience's murmurs, the rustle of programs, and the faint clinking of glasses. Each note of his past echoed in his mind, from the heartache of being expelled from the Harmony Orchestra to the triumphant release of his album, Rhythms of Resilience. He was not just a musician anymore. He was a voice for those silenced by prejudice. "Are you ready, Elijah?" his manager Sam asked, peeking through the curtain. The excitement in Sam's eyes was palpable, a reflection of the support Elijah had garnered from fans across the country. "More than ever," Elijah replied, a smile breaking through his nerves. The stage lights flickered on, illuminating the space with a warm, inviting glow. As he stepped out, the roar of the crowd enveloped him, a wave of energy that surged through his veins. He could see faces filled with hope, admiration, and understanding. It was a sea of humanity that resonated with his journey. "Good evening, Atlanta," Elijah called out, his voice steady and confident. "Thank you for being here tonight. This isn't just a concert. It's a celebration of resilience and the power of music to unite us." The audience erupted in applause, and as he strummed the first chords of his opening song, a hush fell over the crowd. The melodies flowed effortlessly from his fingertips, weaving tales of struggle and triumph, each note a testament to his journey. As he sang, he could see people swaying, some with tears in their eyes, others with smiles that mirrored his own. Yet, as the tour progressed, Elijah began to notice the darker side of fame. While most responses were overwhelmingly positive, a few critics still clung to outdated beliefs, their voices echoing in the shadows. He received messages filled with vitriol, anonymously written notes that sought to undermine his success. "Hey, did you see this?" Sam said one afternoon, his voice tinged with concern. He handed Elijah a printout of an online article riddled with derogatory comments and thinly veiled racism. "These people just don't get it." Elijah took a deep breath, the familiar sting of anger rising within him. "They may not understand, but that won't stop me. I can't let their hatred define my journey." As Elijah continued to perform, the backlash only fueled his determination to speak out against racism in the arts. He began incorporating messages of empowerment and unity into his shows, encouraging fans to stand against prejudice. Each performance became a rallying cry, a reminder that music could transcend boundaries and heal wounds. Then, one evening, as he prepared for a show in Chicago, Elijah received an anonymous letter. The envelope was plain, but the contents were anything but. As he read the words scrawled on the paper, his heart raced. The letter revealed a shocking truth. Mr. Thompson, the conductor who had expelled him from the Harmony Orchestra, had orchestrated a campaign against him, fueled by jealousy and prejudice. Elijah's hands trembled as he processed the information. The anger that had simmered beneath the surface erupted. He felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was not just about him anymore. This was about justice, about exposing the truth behind the facade of respectability that those in power often hid behind. "Sam, we need to talk," he said, his voice firm. "I just received something that changes everything." As they sat down together, Elijah shared the contents of the letter, the gravity of the situation weighing heavily on both of them. "This isn't just about my past. It's about the future. I need to bring this to light." Sam nodded, his expression serious. "We'll figure out a way to address this. You've built a platform, Elijah. Let's use it to call for change." And so, with the fire of determination ignited within him, Elijah prepared to take a stand. He was no longer just a musician. He was a beacon of resilience, ready to confront the injustices that had haunted him and many others. The world needed to hear his story, and he was ready to share it, louder than ever before. Elijah stood backstage, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as he prepared for the live interview that would change everything. His heart raced, the weight of the evidence he had gathered over the past few weeks pressing heavily on his chest. He could feel the anticipation in the air, the hum of the audience beyond the curtain, and the buzzing chatter of the media, all of them waiting for him to speak. Taking a deep breath, he stepped into the spotlight, the cameras flashing to life as he took his seat across from the interview host, Jenna Fields. Her smile was warm, yet inquisitive, a perfect balance for the gravity of the situation. "Elijah, thank you for joining us today." Your story has resonated with so many, and today, you're here to share something significant, correct? Elijah nodded, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Yes, Jenna. I've come to address recent allegations regarding my dismissal from the Harmony Orchestra, and I believe it's time for the truth to be unveiled. As he spoke, Elijah felt the weight of his words, each syllable a step toward reclaiming his narrative. He recounted the events leading to his expulsion, detailing the racial slurs he had overheard, the whispers of discontent, and ultimately, the betrayal he faced from Mr. Thompson. With every revelation, the audience leaned in closer, captivated. I have evidence, he continued, pulling out documents and recordings that detailed Thompson's discriminatory actions, including emails that revealed the conductor's motivations driven by jealousy and prejudice. The backlash was instantaneous. Jenna's expression shifted from one of curiosity to shock. This is explosive, Elijah. How do you feel knowing that this man, someone in a position of power, tried to sabotage your career? Elijah glanced into the camera, his resolve unwavering. It's disheartening, but I refuse to be a victim. This isn't just about me. It's about the countless others who have faced similar injustices in the arts. We need to stand up for what's right. As the interview concluded, social media erupted with outrage. Hashtags calling for Thompson's resignation began trending as people rallied behind Elijah's cause. News outlets scrambled to cover the story, and within hours, the Harmony Orchestra found itself under a microscope. Mr. Thompson, once a revered figure, was now the subject of intense scrutiny. Behind the scenes, chaos ensued. The board members gathered in an emergency meeting, their faces a mix of concern and disbelief. "This is a disaster for our reputation," one board member exclaimed, his voice laced with anxiety. "We can't afford to ignore this. We must act now." After hours of deliberation, the decision was made. The board released a statement announcing the termination of Mr. Thompson's contract, citing the damaging impact of his actions on both Elijah and the orchestra. As the news broke, Elijah felt a surge of relief wash over him. Justice was being served, but more importantly, a change was beginning to take shape within the industry. Days later, Elijah received a call that would further cement his path toward reconciliation. "Mr. Carter, this is Rebecca from the Harmony Orchestra," the voice on the other end said, clear and professional. "We want to extend an invitation for you to perform with us again, on your terms. We understand the significance of this opportunity and wish to make amends." Elijah paused, considering the weight of her words. "What does that mean for the orchestra moving forward?" he asked, his voice steady yet curious. "We're committed to fostering an environment of inclusivity and respect. We want you to be part of this change," she replied, sincerity evident in her tone. After a moment of reflection, Elijah smiled, his heart swelling with hope. "I accept, but I want to ensure that this isn't just a one-time performance. I want to work together to create a lasting impact." As he hung up the phone, Elijah felt a profound sense of closure. Not only had he reclaimed his place in the music world, but he had also opened the door for change within an institution that had once turned its back on him. This performance would symbolize not just a personal victory, but a step toward long-overdue transformation in the arts. In the days leading up to the concert, Elijah poured his heart into the music, blending his unique sound with elements of the orchestra, creating a beautiful tapestry of resilience and unity. On the night of the performance, as he took the stage alongside the musicians who once shunned him, the audience erupted into applause, their support echoing through the hall. In that moment, as he played the first notes of his new composition, Elijah understood that music was not only a means of expression, but also a powerful tool for change. The sound of resilience was louder than ever, and he was ready to lead the charge.